with pure delight, and the people strong and healthy, full of godly reverent fear. May we ever seek to praise Thee, for He's gift so rich and rare. Come ye forward, sons and daughters of this gem beyond compare. Strive for honor, sons and daughters, do the right, be firm, be fair. Toil with hearts and hands and voices, must prosper. Sound the call in which everyone rejoices. For each and each one.
Yes, good evening and welcome to this new program. Tonight we're going to have Pastor Rodney in a while who will give us, lead us in the prayer so we can start this thing tonight in a very prayerful and nationalistic manner. Tonight, this program is called let me just get myself organized. But tonight is a special program. It is dubbed the Saturday Night Live Ultimate Battle for True Electoral Reform for Dominica. And of course, the ERC is declaring the month of June as the month where we, the people of Dominica, red, green, blue, yellow, whatever the color you may be, to recognize the importance of our nation and, of course, to stand for true electoral reform. So in a while, as soon as we get a call from Pastor Rodney, we will take the prayer and then we'll introduce the program, and we have some very exciting discussion tonight. We have some good persons on the panel who will then take this discussion to you wherever you are in Dominica, the Caribbean, and the world. So let me again say good evening to all of you, our listeners at home and abroad. And this program is called the Electoral Reform Coalition presents Saturday Night Live, the ultimate battle for true electoral reform in the Commonwealth of Dominica. Of course, we have quite a lot to talk about tonight, and we just want to advise you when you call, please be brief and let's do it in good taste. And we would want to focus tonight on the topic at hand. And of course, the panelists will lead you on the various areas. The ERC, that's the Electoral Reform Coalition, our recommendation that went to the authorities in time, and of course, the government or Roosevelt's carrot legislation, and we'll see where we have done quite a lot of work on this, and we have come up with some recommendation to ensure that the reform goes to Parliament properly, so at the end of the day we could have a reform that every Dominican at home and abroad can be pleased and proud of, because it is, of course, a reform to move our society forward. Well, we would have to probably take another program, and probably later on, Pastor Rodney will call us and we will have the prayer. So let us take this one here.
In the year 1493, Christopher Columbus came. He saw a huge mass of land. It was green, so high and untamed. It was Sunday, a lovely day, and blue as the sea and sky. We live this new land, Dominica. After all, Lord, say he cried. Non è bella, non è quattro, non è gente, ma cosa si può? E come tu risuli, tu me ne pilascia. E capite io buona mi guardo. Capite io buona mi guardo. At first our lips were not friendly, teaching strangers away. For a long time this land was theirs, for no one else wanted to stay. But now today we can be free, and the land belongs to all. We'll make all land a happy dream, and all will be welcome to all. When the British heard of this place, they came to settle in. They brought Africans to our soil. The Caribs were to stay with them. French people got to know of the land, so they came with a mind and will. Though the British won back the land, the French country's held with us still.
We're back on, and we have Pastor Rodney on the line. Pastor Rodney?
Yes, John. So, good night.
Good night, good night. Yes.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. The late Vic Revelle say fundamentally all right.
Yes, I know that. I know that language.
Yes. So of course.
Well, I'm glad to be with you tonight, also, for a few minutes.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. And I think what we're doing from tonight is an excellent initiative, so that our people can have a very good stand on what is happening, a very good knowledge of what's happening to us.
For sure.
Yes. So let's have a word of prayer. Also.
Yes. Good.
Father, we thank you that you have been a good God to us. You've stood by us. You've visited us. You've taken care of us over all these decades. As a nation, Father God, we have been through turmoil. We have been through dark times. We have been through some good moments that you have blessed us with. But we realize that you have also preserved us. So tonight we ask for your preservation. We ask, Lord, for your direction. As a nation, we look towards electoral reform that is free and fair. We look towards, Father God, legislation that will cause every Dominican to be satisfied following every election. And so we ask, Lord, that level-headedness will prevail in our nation, Father God, and that as our people learn, as our people come to understand that electoral reform laws are probably the second most important legislation in the country after the Constitution. Together, Father God, we will be able to work towards a fair and equitable system. I ask tonight for guidance on this program and every other Saturday night. Dear God, that you will provide wisdom for the anchor, you will provide wisdom for those who will sit in, for those who will provide information. I ask, Lord, that their heart will be in the right direction, Father God, as a discussion on fairness, on justice, reign supreme in that conversation. Thank you for taking hold of this program and for giving Johnson the wisdom that he needs to host and facilitate the conversation. Father God, will be mindful always to give you thanks and praise and glory, because all is due unto you in Jesus' name.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Pastor Rodney. We appreciate
You're very
that.
welcome.
And of course, God is always there, and we have to ensure that we ourselves are there. So
That's correct.
by recognizing and appreciating His presence, because He guides us, He keeps us alive and keep us well, and give us the ability and the strength to persevere and to deal with matters that are, important to us, and to serve Him and to serve our fellow men. And of course, tonight, this new program, we want to ensure that He is with us all through.
Of course, of course.
Mm-hmm.
God bless both.
Thank you so much.
Very good.
And I know you're a busy man, but we appreciate you very much.
You're very welcome. Thanks.
Sure.
Very good.
Okay, as I said to you earlier on, this is an initiative of the Electoral Reform Coalition. Of course, we have been on this road quite a while, discussing reform. So for more than 14 years. And I mean, when we believe we're getting somewhere with reform, we are still having some, difficulties to have the right things in place. But tonight we'll explore all of these. And I just want to say to those of you listening, and again, to welcome you and to thank you for tuning in. And I know a number of persons are tuning tonight. A number of persons always tune in to the big station, Q95 FM radio. And tonight we will, as I advised earlier on, when you call, please be brief. Let's do it in good taste, and let us focus on the issue at hand. And the panelists will later on bring this, and then we'll take it from there and move on with it. Also tonight we'll have Dr. Fontaine, who is out there in La Plaine, and then he's going to Grand Fond. So he's on the constituency move there, and he will join us a little later. So we'll have a fine discussion here tonight. So let me just say to you again that tonight this program is to sensitize and educate the people of Dominica on the whole issue of reform. I mean, you have heard a lot about reform over the years, and of course, we are in what you call countdown point, where we want to ensure whatever goes to Parliament is something that's favorable to all of us, because when you're in government, you may feel that you are in power, you have the authority, and therefore you don't need to do what is right. You do what you want, what you think is good for you, but government is not you, it's about the people. And so it's about the people. When you're elected in a democracy, you do what will, please and benefit the majority of the society. So again, welcome and good evening, and thank you for tuning in. And let me just say to you, we are putting together quite a number of activities for the month of June. And on the month of June, and in these activities, we'll have community engagement, we'll have meetings, public meetings, and we'll have a mass rally somewhere towards the end of June. We'll inform you exactly where it is in Roseau. So start to make your plans, start to get yourself organized, and put yourself together. And while we are planning these things, remember it has a cost, and we have to pay for a lot of stuff, bringing people out and to mobilize and motivate and to get out there. So we're asking you early enough to assist us to do the work we have to do this month and to get the reform working. So we ask you for your donation locally, and those of you overseas, and then later we'll give you the areas in which these contributions can be made so that we can get this assistance to do the work that has to be done. Let me just go to Mr. Coffee with us here. Mr. Coffee, good night.
Yes, good night, Mr. Boston, and good night to all our listeners and maybe our viewers as well on the various media platforms. I am pleased to be part of this panel and the activities of the ERC as we try to educate you on the way forward as regards to electoral reform. So I'm pleased to be here to be part of this esteemed panel tonight.
We always appreciate you, Mr. Coffey, and we want to thank you for the work that you have been doing, and thank the concerned citizens movement for the work that they have done over the years in regard to reform and many other things as related to our country's development. And you're always available. So you're part of the army for good in Dominica. So let us go to our panel online now and let them introduce themselves and say who they are and what they're involved in. We'll take it from there. So can you all hear us online?
Yes, we could hear you. I could hear you loud and clear.
Yes, so go right ahead.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Okay, well, I could start maybe.
Yes, you should. I did not want to call the name until you introduce yourself.
All right, well, I'm Kent Vital and currently serving as the chairman of the National Joint Action Movement. So I'm pleased to be here. This is a very, very important matter that we need to deal with as a nation. We have been for a while on the quest for electoral reforms that are fair, that are just, and we have a proposal before us from the government that doesn't meet that criteria. It is not fair and it is not just, but it can be easily adjusted based on the way the law is written. But as it is, the few things they are put in here, it makes it unfair and unjust. So we will seek to explain that tonight, and we need your support in deciding where do we go from there to ensure that what is fair and what is just is done in our nation.
Thank you so much. And of course, we always appreciate you and your contribution to mankind, to our society, and to see it move forward. Yes, our next guest on the line.
Anthony Samora Charles, parliamentary representative for Marigot. This electoral reform matter is a pressing issue that all citizens and concerned citizens, both here and abroad, need to pay particular attention because we are basically calling for a level playing field. And I presently am serving as parliamentary representative just because of electoral reform. Because electoral reform has caused parties to stay out of election, cause sometimes riots, confusion, but all we are asking for is a level playing field. And we are trying to explain some matters to make sure that this playing field is level. So to all the viewers, listeners, both here and abroad, try and listen, take in the information so you can make a just and informed decision in moving forward with this electoral reform.
Thank you so much, Honorable Charles. And of course, he's the Member of Parliament, as he said, for the Marigot constituency, and he's a member of the opposition. You know, there are two elected members in the opposition, the MP for Marigot, who you just heard, and the MP for Salisbury, who is the leader of the opposition. And based on our constitution, then 4 senators will be recommended by the leader of the opposition to the president for appointment. So we have 4 senators with them in the parliament constituting the opposition in our parliament. And our parliament is made of 2 sides, the government side and the opposition side. And in governance, in the democracy, both sides are very, very important and so on. So the numbers may look small, but the effect and representation in the parliament is very important. And therefore, we, of course, commend the opposition, wish them well, and of course, support them in doing the work that has to be done to ensure that our governance is balanced in this country of ours. As I said earlier on, later on, we'll hear from Dr. Fontaine, who's not online. He will call later because he's in the Lapland area and moving to Grand Fond, and he will call us from there. So we'll have his input later. Again, I want to just caution us when we call, please be brief. Let's do it in good taste and let's focus on the topic at hand so that we can have a very good discussion. But of course, the ERC, and as you should know by now, was formed on the 7th of November 2022 to oppose what we consider was a sham election, having come from one in 2019, which came early as a snap election. We was not expecting another snap election so soon, and therefore the Electoral Reform Coalition was formed. And as you heard from Honorable Charles, because of the non-implementation of reform, the political parties did not participate in the last election as a protest to show the importance of getting this reform issue settled. So we do not want to have any trouble. We do not want to have a fight with government. We just want what is fair for Dominica, for all of us. The persons in authority are Dominicans, yes. We may disagree with their policy and their programs and feel that they should be doing more for the benefit of the country and its people, but we do not have anything personally against these people, and therefore we're not in for a fight and out for trouble. This is why we did our very best to engage, and we wrote the Prime Minister asking for a meeting so we could discuss, and we never got that meeting. Can you imagine? We have not had a meeting with the Electoral Commission. We have requested a meeting, and we have not gotten that to this date. Thank you. We had a meeting with Her Excellency the President. Very cordial, nice meeting. The Attorney General was there, and again, our proposal in the dossier was presented to Her Excellency the President. So we thank her for that, because the authorities, those in office, belong to us, and therefore we have to dialogue, we have to discuss, so we can do things together in the interest of our country. So in a while, we're going to come and start the discussion. So let me just give you a little taste again of Pakiti Upodom God No.
Yes, your fire we live on. Wind and rain, French, Caribbean, Africa, we are unique, oh yes, my friend. Now we are on our own at last. Push us from, we are going to be a revelation for children of right.
Yes, we're back, and let me just say, Mr. Ken Vital, Chairman of the National Joint Action Movement, you've been part of the work of the ERC since we have started, and we have done some very good work. We have met, we have had a few lawyers with us. We have looked at the Sir Dennis Byron recommendations, and of course, we ourselves put together through the lead of the Business Forum and made presentation of these recommendations to the Prime Minister, to his government. And I said earlier on, we gave, as part of a dossier to Her Excellency the President, And we had a very successful, very good session at the UE Open Campus some Saturdays ago, where we looked at our recommendation vis-a-vis what Byron, which we had already done, presented, and the government presented what we dub as carrot legislation. And the idea is to see what they present, if it meet what we had suggested and what the discussion had been, because remember, we've had, before the ERC, we have the consensus movement working on reform. We've had the OAS CARICOM Commonwealth, did some work. We had the civil society group of churches, unions, and business people, did some work and presented a report. The small business, or the business unit, sorry, also did work. So therefore, there's a lot of hard work that have been put in on this. So Mr. Ken Vital, the ERC have had some recommendation, and I'm sure you would like to share it with our listeners.
Okay. We had, thanks also again. With the business forum had prepared a number of recommendations that the ERC has adopted and we have been using in our deliberations. So just to remind listeners of what these are, because what we did is look at the legislation that they have provided, the draft legislation, to see the extent to which they have taken heed or have implemented any of those recommendations. So just to remind people what those recommendations are, we have broken them down for those recommendations that could be implemented in our mind, in the medium or short term, those which could be implemented in the those in the short term, immediate or short term, and secondly, those in the medium term, and thirdly, those in the long term. So for now, I will focus on those that we think could be implemented in the short or immediate term. So one, that the voters list should be cleansed annually, not merely of deceased persons, but of anyone who has not been ordinarily resident in Dominica for at least 5 years. I don't know if you want me to comment quickly as to whether or not that has been addressed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this one, so far, they have dealt with the deceased person's part, but they have not dealt with the part of persons who are ordinary resident in Dominica. Number two, unless otherwise provided, the right to vote is limited to citizens of Dominica of 18 years or older who is ordinarily resident in Dominica at the time of the calling of elections. They have continued with the first part. Of course, you have to be a citizen, 18 or resident, Commonwealth resident, but they have not addressed the issue of ordinary resident in Dominica. They have not addressed it fully in relation to the part of persons who are ordinary resident overseas. Number three, for the purpose of this legislation, the definition of ordinary resident is as follows. An ordinarily resident means a regular and habitual mode of life in Dominica, as opposed to a temporary sojourn, vacation, visit, or transitory presence. Does not include the provisions involving Commonwealth citizens, which remain unchanged. Okay, so they have defined what an ordinary resident is in legislation. Most of it is fine, except that they have not dealt specifically with the issue of Dominicans who are no longer ordinarily resident in Dominica. So they have not dealt with that part, and that part needs to be dealt with. Number four, there shall be no overseas registration of voters. However, confirmation of overseas voters should be done on a thorough basis with the production of a government-issued identification card or by passport. There's a clause that makes provision for overseas centers, but that clause is it doesn't say how many centers, it doesn't say where, and it uses the word shall, or may, sorry, the government may. Okay? So it's not definite on whether or not it will be done. It could go either way, but the provision is made for overseas centers. So so it's against our recommendation in the sense that we were suggesting for no overseas registration of voters or no overseas confirmation of voters. Okay, number 5, Electoral Commission shall have the authority to remove from the voters list the names of all persons who have not resided in the Dominica for a minimum of 5 years. They have totally ignored that and not dealt with that. They have sought to subvert that and make it what they have always been clamoring for, as opposed to what everybody else have been asking for. 6, all eligible voters in Dominica shall be issued a voter identification card. They have addressed that to some degree. Oh, sorry, let me finish with that one. The voter identification card shall contain biometric data, including but not limited to fingerprinting. They have addressed the issue of identification card, but they have remained very broad. All they have said is that it will include picture identification, and then they have said it will include other security features, but they didn't define that. It is not codified in the law. So it leaves it wide open to the discretion of whoever is to issue the cards. So as number 6 is not adequately met. So while they have put the provision, there is no provision for biometric data specifically. It's left to the discretion of whoever is doing it. On the day of election, it is an offense for an election officer to ask voter for his or her ballot before the voter places the ballot into the ballot box. I will not comment on that one because I'm not recalling the specifics of whoever that was specifically addressed. Number 8, the breach of any provision of legislation governing elections in Dominica is punishable by a fine or custody or, in appropriate circumstances, disqualification from contesting future elections. This is dealt with to some measure, but many of us think to some extent that the fines and the custodial sentences are not harsh enough, are not strong enough. They do not prevent enough of a deterrent. Number 9, voting in more than one constituency by a voter during an election shall be an offense punishable by a term of imprisonment. Okay, this may be addressed to some degree, but we'll have to go back to cross-check. Number 10, the payment of air or sea travel for a person ordinary resident Dominica abroad with the express or implied intention of having that person vote for a candidate of his or her party or to refrain from voting constitute the offense of bribery punishable by a fine, custody, or term of imprisonment, or where appropriate, disqualifications from contesting future elections or future elections. So this was not specifically addressed. The issue of bribery was addressed generally, but this specific thing to do with travel overseas was not specifically addressed, and that is not acceptable to the ERC. Number 11, the Electoral Commission shall, upon the issuing of the writ for elections, consult with the electronic and print media in Dominica to draw up a timetable for political broadcasts and access to print media for political candidates, to promote their views through the electronic media, and to have the messages printed in newspaper. This was addressed to some extent, but specifically in relation to government-controlled media. That is maybe fair. Number 12, subject to paragraph 20, any member of the Electoral Commission who provides any service to the government of Dominica for consideration other than being a member of a commission shall be disqualified from serving as a member of the commission. They have addressed some of that to a very limiting degree, in the sense that they have just said you can, if you're on the commission and there's a matter that comes up in terms of a contract to do with the Electoral Commission, you have to declare your interest, but that is far from what we were talking about. So basically 12 has not been addressed. So persons with contracts have not been disqualified in the new legislation from being on the commission. Number 13, the payment of overseas or foreign entertainers by a candidate or political party to provide entertainment during an election with the express or implied intention of persuading voters to vote for the candidate of his or her party or to refrain from voting constitutes an offense of treating. This has not been specifically addressed in the current legislation. Number 14, a fixed amount of money shall be annually be allocated to the Electoral Commission by the government of Dominica to enable it to exercise its duties and responsibilities are recommended by the Commission to be disbursed to the Commission within a period of not exceeding 60 days. I will not comment on this one. I'll have to refresh my mind as to what it says in that part, or somebody else could say. Number 15, the political leader of each political party contesting an election shall engage in at least 3 debates. That was not addressed, but we are not this is one that we can, we don't necessarily think needs to go through at this point. Each candidate of the major political parties contesting a general election who is not a political leader must engage in at least 1 debate. This again was not addressed, but to our mind that could pass. Number 17, any candidate who wins an election as a representative of a political party and intends to switch to another political party, whether in government or opposition, shall resign as a parliamentarian and participate in a by-election. This has not been addressed in the legislation. Number 18, if only 1 candidate is nominated in a constituency to contest an election on nomination day, the electoral reform shall extend the nomination process by a further 7 days to allow other persons the opportunity to be nominated. This was not addressed. So these are the recommendations that we had made that we felt could possibly have been implemented in the immediate or over the short term. So we will leave it there for now. The others are medium term. We could come back to that later, and long-term recommendations. Also, over back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kent. Thank you so much. And we just want to, in terms of the point you made about the overseas confirmation of centers overseas, and you rightly said that we wanted persons to, and that's what we are putting forward, that persons come here and present themselves wherever you are to be confirmed. Because if you, say for example, you set up a center, say in New York, and you be Antigua, and you didn't set up a center, let's say in Anguilla, where Dominicans are, you're discriminating, really. And in election, everybody have the right who are qualified, and there should be no discrimination. And the Prime Minister, in a press conference, answering to a question asked by Curtis Matthew, made exactly the point that we are put forward in our recommendation, but in the legislation, it is not there. So I just want to play it for you to hear what the Prime Minister say, which is in sync with what we ourselves have put forward, but it is not in the legislation that they have presented.
In respect to some of these significant changes, one, you're going to have the confirmation process, where each person who is on the voters list must present himself, avail himself to the Electoral Commission to say, yes, I am Curtis Matthew, this is where I'm voting, this is my ID, etc. And so that your necessary biodata as required by the law will be taken, and then you will be registered, will be confirmed as being a bona fide voter in Dominica, and your name shall remain on the voters list. So that's one of the fundamental points. The other fundamental point is that you will require an ID. We have called it, or we are calling it in the law, a voter ID card. And that is another fundamental point. Another fundamental point is that persons who currently reside out of Dominica and who are on the voters list, you will have to come to Dominica to have yourself confirmed. So we will not be going to the various capitals around the world to allow this to happen. We want to avoid anybody accusing us of using our embassies or a hotel that is owned by a friend of the government, you know, how we are in Dominica. So you'll have to avail yourself in Dominica. So say somebody who's living in the United Kingdom and who wants to remain on the voters list, he or she would have to travel to Dominica to have his name confirmed or her name confirmed on the voters list. So we won't come to London or to Manchester to have you confirmed. That will be done in Dominica.
And of course, that is a reasonable point, because as I just said a while ago, and this is what we have been putting forward, is if you create a center in one of the big cities where you have a number of Dominicans, and you ignore where you have a few Dominicans, one day two are Dominicans, you are discriminating. And we felt that everybody who have an interest, because if you travel, you're out of state and you have an interest in the country, and your name is on the list, then you should come home and make yourself available to the Electoral Commission to be confirmed. And we agree with that. But as I said, it is not in the legislation. Legislation have it saying that they shall establish centers abroad for confirmation. So we're totally against that. Okay, well, we have with us,
So-
yes.
Yeah, but also just to say, so we're against that. So we're suggesting that section 51 that addresses that. Why even put it in? You shouldn't put it in. You should take it off altogether.
Yeah.
You don't need section 51. So, but we have to be mindful that, and that's why they did not maybe address the whole issue of treating and paying of tickets. So while the Prime Minister is saying people will have to come home, I believe that behind that he may have a plan. The truth is that the whole process has not been genuine. It has been a sham elections, sham consultations, and now before us, yes, it seemed to be sham reforms. So the truth is he going to once again bring people in droves, paying tickets, so have them confirmed? Now that really brings us to the issue of confirmation, and that is the major challenge we are having. A confirmation is supposed to be a process whereby one confirms that the information in the voting system about them is correct. If the information is not correct, you should not be confirmed and you should be required to re-register. So the way that they have, and if you listen to his statement, that's exactly what he's saying. They have cunningly presented the confirmation in such a way that all you're really going to do is say, yes, I am on the list and I want to remain on the list. That cannot be confirmation. Confirmation is supposed to confirm that the information about you is correct. If it's not correct, you're supposed to re-register, as opposed to complete re-registration where everybody has to re-register. So somebody whose information is correct would not have to re-register. Now, so therefore they are subverting the process by doing, and I guess we'll discuss it more as we go along, by the regulations that they have presented. They have done it in such a way that all someone has to do is simply say, I am of this polling district, in this constituency, and therefore I present myself. That is not enough. That has to go way beyond that. You need to indicate whether the information about you, about your residency, is correct. If it's not correct, if it's no longer relevant, you should not be confirmed, or you should re-register with the correct address. That is what it's really supposed to be. But they have chosen to so subvert the process. The structure of the law itself is not terrible, but they have put a few things in place to subvert the entire thing to give them the exact result that they want. And in effect, as someone had said, they have presented something that is worse than what we had before.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you again, Kent. We had a wonderful workshop, and I mentioned that a couple of Saturdays ago at the UE Open Center. And member for Marigot, you were there at that workshop, and I think we did a fantastic work there. And of course, we compared and contrast, and a lot of the areas that Kent have just mentioned, and all they have, ignored and tried to do it in a way that is not the true reflection of the reform that the people of Dominica, the various reports, even persons who are not Dominicans who have done report, like the OAS, Commonwealth and CARICOM, have put forward. And we saw where they completely ignored the recommendation of Sir Dennis Byron for campaign finance course, and they removed the 5-year requirement. In other words, the present legislation said if you're out of state for more than 5 years uninterrupted, then you ought not to be on the list. That doesn't mean to say if you come back and you re-establish your residency, that you can't be registered. And so they removed that completely. And the other reason for that our forefathers recognized is that there are more persons living outside of Dominica than inside. And if you open the floodgate, it means that you may have a government running a country that the people of the country did not approve. And therefore, its program and policy sets for the people in the country, and those who elect it are not there to fail whatever it is. So, Honorable Charles, we just want your input here. And why is it that the government totally ignored Sir Dennis Byron recommendation of campaign finance?
Good night once again. Good night once again.
Yeah, go ahead.
Many moons ago, the electoral recommendation was some electoral recommendation was made from some ex-electoral commissions, and it was referred to as madness, and it was totally ignored like 15, 20 years ago. And the then opposition forces keep pushing, pushing, and pushing to get a level playing field. Then they sent for Sir Byron, paid over $600,000. Then it had consultation throughout the country, which was totally ignored. And these documents and legislation and recommendation that I'm seeing there basically is the same. It was referred to as madness. So it's the same madness they rejected. They bring back the same madness to the parliament. It's going to be passed in the parliament. The eyes have it for sure. So it's a parliament decision that's going to take place. As for the people, the general public, the citizens, the voters, both here and abroad, what next? A lot of people are speaking about educating the people. They're speaking about protests. They're speaking about taking the reform, forcing the government to implement it. But the reform is basically we using our voting hand and reform this whole thing, because he totally ignored the campaign financing. And being in the government with a upper hand, maybe with financially, without having a campaign financing in the legislation, any opposition is not going to win. No opposition cannot win without a campaign financing, meaning they should have a cap on certain constituency of how much spending, how many like entertainers, like treating the electors. So you have to put a cap. It's a simple thing. Throughout the Caribbean, it have it. I don't know why we like to pattern on other Caribbean islands for certain things, but not for the reform. I don't know what. We never had to pay Byron over $600,000, and Byron come and take our recommendation. It's our recommendation. He framed it how he wanted it. It's our recommendation he took and framed from the Electoral Commission and other opposition forces. So he took it and framed it himself to put it in favor of the present government, which still have the opposition at a disadvantage. So we need to get not only on the air, we need to get our people on the ground. We need to convince our sisters, our brothers and sisters, especially overseas, why are you all, if they think they're putting us in a better advantage or a disadvantage, why you all keep coming and interfering with our election? Is we are the ones who are on the ground, we are the ones who are feeling it. If it's okay with us on the ground, let us determine who we want. Do make a trip, someone buying you a ticket to come down. Yes, you are Dominican, you have a right to vote, but why you leave here and went away? Let us fight our battle. You can help us, yes, support us, tell us this, but you don't have to come because this is not, it's not going to be leveled. This is going to pass in the House of Assembly. And I don't want this thing to escalate, because once it's not leveled, people are going to be angry, and it's just a matter of time before people react to certain things. But I don't want this to go this way. But we need to educate our friends, families on this reform, because I'm not talking about education on the legislation and this, is the disadvantage that they're going to be putting the citizens in the island. I don't know about the diaspora. The people in the island are feeling the brunt of it. Let us deal with this matter on our own. Give the people overseas. I'm not saying you cannot help us, but let us deal with this thing in a manner that we, the Dominicans in Dominica, can handle it. We need to, yes, you in America, Europe, wherever, we listen to your politics, we listen it, we make our comment, but we cannot interfere. A lot of us have dual citizenship. Sometimes some people in Dominica have American. They do not go and vote, they just leave it alone because they don't live there. Why can't we just make us handle our affairs down here? Because this thing, yes, you love your workers' party, yes, you love your labor rights. And when he doesn't put a re-registration, he put a reconfirmation. So you, the citizen, live over there for 15 years, can just come down with any ID and say you vote in police station, this in Margot, and you reconfirm on the list right away. You're not legible, but you reconfirm, and nobody can stop you from voting. So it has some loopholes still in that reconfirmation system. And the person with more money can bring down more person to reconfirm. That is already a disadvantage for the people, the party without any extra cash at hand. So this is already uneven playing field. So this it's going to pass. But how are we going to prevent those people from coming to reconfirm? We cannot. We just have to educate those people on what to do going forward, because they're going to send for the people, send them, they can come down, reconfirm, and they're on the list. And in the event, there's also a clause in the event during the reconfirmation process, an election is called. This was placed in it. An election is called. The provision is made that the old existing list, the old list is going to be used. The next bloated list again. So that is already uneven playing field again. So I don't know how this is going to be rectified. We need to educate our people on this matter, because this electoral reform thing, a lot of especially young people are not taking much interest in this electoral reform thing. I don't know why. I don't know if they're not seeing it as important, but in the latter end, this is going to affect a lot of us. If we don't put it right and make changes, we have to give and take. There are some recommendations that is good, but he totally ignored the campaign financing, and the reconfirmation process is vague. We need some more information. Like anybody can just come down and reconfirm, even though you're out of the island for over 20 years, just come down and reconfirm. You reside here for over 15 years, come down and reconfirm. And it's as simple as that. Based on what I'm seeing, it's simple as that. And this is not an evil playing field. So we need to, I don't know if it has some clarification that we missed. I don't think we missed anything, but something needs to be clarified with this reconfirmation, because it's too vague that we don't even know. You can be living overseas for 20 years. Let's come down, reconfirm. That's it. You're on the list, you get your voter's ID, you can come down and vote whenever, which I find is unfair for you to not be a resident in the island and just come down, because they took all the 5 years thing altogether. Resign for 5, they took it out. So there's nothing in place for that. So now this is going to affect the voting system. It's going to go in the favor in the existing government, it's going to go in their favor. So once again, they draft up something for themselves, for their favor, in their favor, which is going to be passed because they are majority in the House. So we just have to sensitize the public on this whole draft legislation for the electoral reform, and not only sensitize them, you have to really show them, break it down for them, because all these tips and legislation and constitution I don't think people really want to hear these things. You know. They want you to break it down and tell them, hey, it's not leveled. The person with the most money going to win because it's not level. You come down from America 20 years, you come and you reconfirm, you get your voter's ID, and that's it, which is unfair.
Yes.
But we're going to leave it to the citizens of Dominica to make an in-tune decision moving forward. That's
Yes.
it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Honorable Charles, Anthony Charles. Watchman, we as Dominicans, we have, I mean, I know you have people abroad, I have people abroad, so we do not have an issue with our citizens who live overseas. And I said earlier on, our forefathers, when they were crafting the law, they recognized, and the whole region has this proviso that if you're out of state for more than 5 years uninterrupted, it means you are not interested in what is happening politically, that is, and therefore you should not be on the list. And I made the point that if you're off the list, once you reestablish residency based on the law, then you can get back on the list. So it's not a matter that you're out for good. Okay?
Yes, yes.
And then the other thing is if you have to give something to show that you are so concerned and involved in what is happening and want to see the country go forward. And therefore, when you get a gift, a ticket, you get monies to come home to vote, really, it's like you have an effect. You're not taking this election issue seriously. And it is a big, I would say, mess up where the government would lead people to break the law. As the government should, the custodian of the country's affairs should ensure that the law is obeyed. And therefore, if you lead people to break the law and still bribe them to break the law, then you ought not to be a government.
Yes, well, it's unfortunate of this development. Let me first of all say, as the president of CCM, that the CCM believe in comprehensive reform and reform with equity so as to provide a level playing field. But as we have recognized, the legislation doesn't meet those requirements in certain key areas. And that is of major concern to us as CCM and to the Electoral Reform Coalition. Yes, of course, Bosso, yes, the law has existed and has required that people who may have been out for 5 years would have to spend some time and, so as to be able to continue to vote. But as we have seen, this 5-year residency requirement is completely out of the situation. So it means that you can go out there and stay as many years as you may want in Timbuktu, and you can come back and vote. And we do not think that that is consistent with the proposals that we have to make, that we have made to government. We are also concerned from the standpoint of CCM that here it is, and I think Mr. Charles in his presentation alluded to that. We have expended enormous funds to engage Dr. Byron. And I think it was indicated in certain discourse by the PM that he would be ready to go ahead and to implement any of the recommendations coming from Mr. Byron's report. But what we are seeing, that is not so. I mean, how can you take state money, taxpayers' money, and engage an individual to provide you with recommendations, and you are actually dishonoring or disregarding many of those recommendations? This is not fair to the citizens because their enormous taxpayers' money have been engaged in having Mr. Byron to provide those guidelines. And an important omission, a very important omission, in the proposals by government is campaign finance reform. And campaign finance reform, we believe, is very crucial in terms of maintaining equity, of maintaining balance, of maintaining fairness in the whole election process. In fact, electoral reform and political party election campaign finance has been an important issue, to the extent that this has been addressed in a paper by Julian Johnson. And in referring to that paper, Mr. Johnson makes reference to cabinet decision to appoint and confirm Sir Dennis Byron to examine the electoral process in Dominica, to include inter alia, the review of existing legislation, and to propose amendments and make recommendations on the way forward, to include any recommended legislative reforms to strengthen our electoral process. My question is, was that done? Was that done? Mr. Julian, in his paper, also references P.F. Skerritt Annual Pally program in October 2000, where Mr. Skerritt stated that Sir Byron's recommendations, together with any new legislation, will be implemented in time for the next general elections. That was in 2000. And Mr. Skerritt soon after called the snap election. So I'm saying that to indicate that Mr. Skerritt himself has not been true to his word in relation to the electoral reform, and particularly election campaign finance. Mr. Johnson also referenced statements made by Honorable Rosie Douglas following the 2000 elections, in which he made some very pertinent statements as regards to the need for campaign finance reform. And that was because in 2000, given the expenditure of the UWP as composed to the Labour Party, Freedom Party at that time, it was felt by the Labour Party that the UWP had the largest of funds, and they felt at that time that moving forward, election campaign finance was going to be a very significant legislative requirement. And Mr. Rosie's party has continued in government for 24 years, and we have not seen any due regard to that statement to put in place campaign finance, election campaign finance. Even PM Skerritt himself, as a junior minister following the 2000 elections, there is documented evidence on I think it was a television program, I forget the name at this time, where Mr. Skerritt himself alluded to the fact that election campaign finance was a necessity. But here is Mr. Skerritt in 2024, after all those years as Prime Minister. If he was probably in the capacity of a junior minister, we could maybe excuse him. But here it is, you are the Prime Minister for well over 10 years, and you are yet, as you alluded in 2000, and as your Prime Minister at the time also alluded, that you have yet to put in place election campaign finance. And I think later down in the program, we will discuss some of the dangers as it refers to the lack of election campaign finance. So I think this is a significant omission in the proposed legislation, and we at the ERC and at the CCM, we are very concerned of the omission of this significant piece of legislation as part of the reform process.
Yes, we thank you, Mr. Coffey. We just want to say to our listeners that you could call in and give us your views on the legislation. And as I said earlier on, let's be brief and do it nicely, and let's stay on the topic. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Yes, how are you?
Good evening.
I'm fine, and you are?
We're doing fine. We're doing fine.
All right. We have been waiting for the longest while from April, 2 weeks in April to June, going to July, and it's the same talk we are talking, and nothing is happening. I don't know how much more we can take or how much more we should talk to get Mr. Skerritt to understand that it has to be what the people of the country need, not what he wants to give to the people. I think we are at this moment talking too much. We need to stand up and take what we need for our country to make our country better for our children, our grandchildren, and the future to come. Mm-hmm. We cannot have one man in this land there just doing as he feels, like it's his father estate he live for him, so he running his father estate. We are not his slaves. We need to stand up and stop talking for a while and decide we're going to do what we have to do. And it's more than time. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Let's stop talking and take our country back from these hyenas and them. Please. Thank you.
Thank you so much for calling. Also, calling with reference to talking. Mm-hmm. But remember, it is our responsibility as responsible citizens and leaders to give you the information, because the world over is listening, the region is listening, the world over, and we want to be reasonable in what we are requesting, what we're asking for, what we're informing people about. And this is why we made these attempts to have an exchange with the Prime Minister and his cabinet, and we went to the President, we had a meeting, and the Electoral Commission. So it's not just get up and take your thing and let's go and prevent. We have to give the information, and based on the information that we give out, that people now will make informed choices and so forth. So no one can say that the people were not informed and they were not told, because we gave the government an opportunity, and as the caller said, it is, I can understand that it's a long opportunity that we have given them to come and do the right thing. Let's get another call here. Hello, good evening.
Hey, good evening, gentlemen.
Yes, good
evening. You and your listeners.
Yes.
Good evening. Gentlemen, I haven't been paying attention long to Dominican politics. Well, up until the last general election, a few months prior to that. Mm-hmm. But at no time did I think the Prime Minister was going to give you guys the electoral reform that you guys wanted. I mean, as brilliant as a lot of you Dominicans are, you guys should know better. Unless you guys are willing to have a revolution, there will be no electoral reform. That's the only solution, gentlemen. Yes. I applaud you guys for sticking to facts and so forth, but if every institution of the government is corrupt, what do you guys expect to do? Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. You guys have a good night.
Thank you very much, and same to you. Good night to you as well. Hello, good evening. Can you come?
Yes, good evening, gentlemen.
Yes, good evening to you.
The name of the program Mr. Coffey was looking for is What About?
Yes, thank you very much.
Election,
yes, what about? Yes.
Yes, he said it to Mr. Leonard Clinton.
Yeah, you're
on
absolutely
the What About
correct. Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
So that is really true.
Yes.
So I want to see what is happening, right? And I think it's time we start doing what we're supposed to.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that input.
Yeah, thank you.
So but as regards to the call for action, we actually, by the time of our ending of our program, we'll be addressing that. There are a few, as we indicated, this program is entitled Saturday Night Live, the ultimate battle for true electoral reform for Dominica. And we at the ERC, we have dedicated June this month as a critical month in the whole pursuit of the realization of electoral reform. So consistent with that objective, there are a series of actions that we have enumerated, and we will discuss that with you coming towards the end of the program. So what we take person's point about the call for action, but we need to inform you, we need to educate you. Some of you may not be aware of what are the significant omissions based on recommendations which have been made. So it is our business as the Electoral Reform Coalition, which has been campaigning for comprehensive electoral reform on behalf of the citizens of Dominica. It is our obligation and responsibility to bring to you the information so that you can educate yourself, and that in itself will assist you in terms of whatever action we may take subsequently.
Yes. Hello, good evening.
Bosso,
Yes, good evening.
even the baby that born today know what's going on in Dominica. The baby that born today knows Skerrit is now willing and he ain't decided to give us no election reform. He want to do it his way so he can always be stealing, rigging the election. And if we continue waiting for Skerrit to come and tell us, well, tomorrow is the day he's doing this and he's going to do it right so we can have a level playing field, it will never happen. But so we need to sit down and team up and decide Dominicans hitting the road. That is the thing all you're supposed to be doing right now. Tell us the day or you want us to come out. Stop coming on radio and tell us what's going on, because we know everything that's going on in Dominica. We've seen it. Tell us what day or you want us on the street so we can hit the street in numbers. That is what we need. We don't need to hear nothing again. We're tired of hearing it.
Okay then.
Thank you.
Thanks, yes. And as Coffee said earlier on, we'll give you in a while. I mentioned it at the start of the program that some of the things that we'll be doing and we'll ask you to assist us in. Kent, you wanted to make a point early on?
Yes, I wanted to just tie the campaign finance reform to some of the other things, just to bring clarity. But before saying that, ERC had recommended that Dominicans who are ordinary resident overseas, who are 18 years or older, can vote in 2 virtual constituencies to elect representatives who would represent the interests of Dominicans abroad. So I wanted to say that to ensure that we have completeness in the conversation. We're interested in Dominicans overseas making a contribution, but it has to be proper, it has to be right. And Dominicans who are interested, we want to find a way to allow that to happen. We recognize, though, that recommendation will have to be worked on. It's maybe something we could work on over the medium or the long term. So I wanted to say that first.
Yes.
Secondly, I wanted to say, even in the statement the Prime Minister made, and then I'm going to tie the things together, concerning, there was a point in which when he played his statement, he said the biometric data as provided for in the law. I wanted to tell you, unless I didn't see it, but I know I read the law, that there is no provision in the law for biometric data. What they have made provision for is image, and they have said a general term, other security features. They have left it open. In other words, they can play around with this and not give biometric data. Okay? So I just want to make that very clear. But having made that clear, I wanted to bring these things together. How has the government been unfair and won elections? I think people have to be very clear so that when we take whatever actions, we know we are taking it from a justified position. How have they won elections? 2 major unfair things they have done. Number 1, they have brought people from overseas. They have calculated carefully the constituencies in which they need 100 voters, 200, whatever. One of the ways they do it is to bring persons who are overseas. They bribe them, they pay their tickets to come down to vote in particular areas where they need those votes. Number 1. So that is why we are calling for confirmation, and they have not provided that. As a matter of fact, what they're doing in the legislation currently is to ensure that persons who are no longer resident in Dominica, if they are on the current list, that they continue to remain in the current list. And my fear is that what they're going to do is use their money to drive those persons down to Dominica once again, so that they will have a permanent advantage on the voters list. People, we cannot allow that to happen. That's one. So that's one way they did it. The second way they did it is from ghost voters. Ghost voting means, and I have heard it before, and I heard it again yesterday, where they have paid guys, and I'm using the word paid because we're going to link it to campaign finance. They are paid guys to go around voting 3-4 times. Again, they calculate carefully how many people we need in this constituency to win, and so on and so forth. And they either bring people down to do that, and they also pay guys to go around. Up to yesterday, it was confirmed that these guys do that. Now, you may say part of the way around that is the voter's ID card. Yes, that might help. And they have provided that, but they have not done enough. They have provided a voter ID card, and all they have provided for is a picture ID. They have not provided for biometric data specifically. We have to ensure that the voter ID card is appropriate, and there must be enough provisions, must be codified in the law adequately so that we have a solid voter ID card. It will help with this. Although I don't necessarily think, well, if it'll definitely help with this, but we also still have to look out for ways in which they are going to be deviant, even with voter ID cards. Now, so the thing is this: if you clean the list properly, if you ensure that those who are on your list are only those who are resident in Dominica, if you do that, if you do the confirmation properly, then you will have then the majority of persons who come down to vote will no longer be on the list. Okay, but as it is, they want to ensure that those persons remain on the list. Why? Because they have huge swaths of money, and I would dare say illicit monies possibly that they have stolen from the people of Dominica themselves, that they can fund elections. So they want to be in a position, number one, to continue to have those persons on the list. Number two, to have a list that is slanted in their favor, because they will drive their people to come down to be on the list. And number three, to continue to use that same money, the money they used to drive their people, to continue to use that money again to bring people to vote once again. So if you do not have campaign finance reform and you still don't have a proper cleansing on the list, we are in trouble, as Anthony had said. We are in perfect trouble. And again, if you don't have campaign finance reform, then you're going to have them having these monies again to pay guys to go around voting 3, 4, 5 times. It's just not fair. Something must give. Is either they completely clean the list properly so that we don't have the problem of non-resident persons who are no longer ordinary resident in Dominica coming down to vote, or you do, well, I shouldn't say, or, they should do both, but for the very minimum, at least clean the list properly.
Properly, yes.
And for the very minimum, and ensure that the voter ID cards are properly codified, properly done, so that you minimize the issue of ghost voting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we will continue to take your calls. Let me just play some music for you there, just to give you a little taste of Saturday night, and I'm sure people are coming through here.
Power rules the world today. Power corrupts, they say. And absolute power corrupts you. Absolutely. It can change a man who has a heart of gold, make him cruel, wicked, self-centered and cold. Many men in this land, many organizations fought for freedom and justice throughout the land. When they have power and authority, they don't give a damn about nobody. Prostituting the island to all and sundry, they peddling my people's right, exploiting oppression, less freedom, more suffering. I wonder how we survive. Think it over, my friend. Think it over again. Think it over, don't vex with me, shut. Think it over, I'm staying at the sea.
Yes. Okay, earlier on, Mr. Copy referred to the statement made by Rosie Douglas, and he said the present Prime Minister is Prime Minister for more than 10 years. Yes, which is correct, but I just do the figure this. He's Prime Minister for 20 years. And we're still there talking about reform. And the whole idea is to get good reform, because And I made the point earlier, you maybe got in government today and you're looking for all little tricks to stay there and to take advantage of the loopholes and so on, because I had quoted here many years ago, I used that quote several times, that a good person may have a bad law and use it to the benefit of the people. So use the bad law in a good way so that people can benefit. A bad person can be given a good law and use the law for their own advantage to further their nests. And we're saying the laws have some loopholes, and if you look at the electoral report after every election, the reports from the chief elections officer, you see areas that they have been making suggestion and recommendation for changes and so on. So it is not we just there talking. And in fact, I made the point on the Freedom Party program last Wednesday that reform is a continuous thing. So we may not get everything in one shot, but it's a continuous thing if you have a good heart and you understand what good governance is about. Because before you had to have property, money in the bank and house and land to run for election. Our forefathers changed that. So once you have an education, you're capable and you can represent people and work for them and their interests, you can put yourself up, and you ought to be given an opportunity in a very fair, transparent, and free contest, and let the best person win. Okay? Then women could not vote because they thought, well, when the men vote, they take care of the women. And then women put forward their right to vote, and that was accepted in reform. And now women can vote. So all the women's up there who support whatever party you support, if that had stayed the way it was in those past days, you would not have a vote to vote for anybody. You also would not even be able to run for election and be in parliament. All right?
At one time, the voting age was 21 years.
That's right.
And it was brought down, the law was changed, and it was brought down to
18 years. So after 18 years, you can make a decision for your life and so on. So these are the things we're talking about. Okay, Kent, in terms of part 2 of our recommendation, because you did mention earlier on, you have short-term, immediate, medium, and long-term. So part 2, recommendation of ERC. Can't you hear us?
Yes, I'm with you. I was muted. Sorry, I was speaking, but I was muted.
Yes.
Okay, so thanks, boss. So I will deal with now the medium-term recommendations and the long-term recommendation. One of them I referred to a while ago. But first, one of the medium-term. There shall be fixed limits on campaign spending, not merely during the reporting period, but also during the 6-month period preceding such a period. Spending in each constituency by a candidate or political party is limited to $100 per person living in that constituency, subject to negotiation. Well, we were just speaking about campaign finance reform a while ago, but that went down. We had classified that a bit as a medium-term adjustment. Next, the Director of Public Prosecution shall no longer have the authority to intervene in a prosecution involving the alleged violation of Dominica's elections laws, or to nolly prosecute any such case before the courts. There was no mention of that in Byron report. Next, a special prosecutor shall be appointed by an independent tribunal or body, rather than by the Attorney General, to prosecute any violations of election legislation. The Director of Public Prosecution shall have no jurisdiction to prosecute election offenses. There's no mention of that in Sir Byron's report. Okay, so these generally, and of course, these were not reflected in the legislation that is presented before us. But these we felt could have been medium-term matters that could be addressed. Then in the long term, these are mostly matters that require constitutional change. And first, we have here, general elections shall be held on a fixed date every 5 years. So that's something we could address in our constitution. I think that's fair. If you really, truly want free and fair, true democracy, we have to stop the games of calling elections early and snap elections. These are games that is not in keeping with true democracy. Next, the next one on the list here is the composition of the Electoral Commission shall be expanded to include an additional complement of 6 members. These additional members shall be nominated by civil society organizations, including but not limited to business sector, the religious sector, the bar association, public service sector organizations, women's organizations, local government, and shall be appointed by the President of Dominica. So Dennis Byron made such recommendations for further discussion. Okay, again, our view was that this could be something that could be looked at. We could look at the constitutional requirement, and this could be addressed on the long term. And then next, Dominicans who are ordinary resident overseas, who are 18 years or older, can vote in 2 virtual constituencies to elect representatives who represent the interests of Dominicans abroad. Okay, so that again might require constitutional change. So that's a genuine discussion we need to have going forward as to how to embrace the persons who live in the diaspora, who have a strong interest in continuing to support this country and work with this country. Next, the Constitution should provide for a hybrid system of first past the post and one of proportional representation as a counterweight against the concentration of and abuse of power by the Prime Minister and his party. He's a whole party.
Yes, Kent, if you hold on for a while, I'm getting a call there. Let me see who's up.
Okay.
Dr. Fountain. Hello, good evening. Hello. Okay, go ahead, Ken.
Okay, so that was the Constitution shall provide a hybrid system. Again, that's something for discussion in the nation, and that was something that could be addressed in the long term. And the last one under the long term that we have here, the owner of a private radio station who is convicted of failing to comply with the legislation shall be punishable by a fine not exceeding 10,000 for each offense. Again, that's something to be discussed going forward. The current legislation address only government-owned media. So these were the other set of recommendations that were on the table. I mean, not all of them necessarily would be expected to go through, but there are some important points that has to be discussed in the nation and adjustments that could be made over the medium and long term.
Yeah. Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening. Also,
yes.
I heard you were getting a call from Dr. Fountain?
Yes. So,
well, let me not hold the line, but I just called to contribute a little bit. But if you're waiting for a call from Dr. Fountain.
No, you can make your point. You can make your point. I will soon.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Boso.
Just be brief, yes.
Boso, and all of you on the panel, Mr. Ken Vital, good night.
Yes.
Good night.
Long time I haven't touched base with you, but
yes,
the only time I was privileged to get Mr. Roosevelt Carey to answer me a question. He was on the other side. Was when I asked him about whether his policemen will harass Mr. Ken Vital, and the answer he gave was very vague. But so some people believe I am critical and I hate the Prime Minister and I hate the Labour Party and I hate everybody. But so I want to tell the world that I love my country because I am living in a country where I see people left well and they came back home and they started all over again and right now they're right to the top, Boso. So if my country is doing well, Boso, I'll be happy. I'll be happy. Yeah. But I call to say, right, there's nothing Mr. Roosevelt Carey can tell the Dominican public for me to believe. But so he recently said that with this document, every Dominican will have a chance, Lord Jesus, to view it, to take a look at it, and see what he's doing now. He's doing exactly what he said he was going to do from day one when Mr. Byron's name came on the scene. He said from Mr. Byron straight to Parliament, and this is what you want to do, Mr. Skerrit. I am asking you again. This is what I'm calling. Mr. Skerrit, will Dominicans lose their lives at the expense of you staying in power? Good night.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Let's take this other call here. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Bosso.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening to the other members of your panel.
Yes.
I'm listening to the discussion here. And me personally, I think the time for these discussions have gone. And what we should be really doing now is deciding that this piece of legislation should not even reach the House of Parliament, far less to be even tabled. That is my view on this matter, because I believe too many times we have gone through these discussions over and over, in and out. The first mistake we made was when we decided, okay, let us hear what Sir Dennis Byron has to say. What did Sir Dennis Byron say? Nothing that changes anything, because at the final analysis, Kerry will do what he wants. He has the majority in Parliament. And unless we prevent the matter from going to the Parliament, which is what we have to do, make no point in going there and we discuss. No, it should not be going there. Secondly, I listened to Mr. Vital and people talking about they need constitutional reform. Yes, I've said so many, many times. We could have pursued two tracks, the constitutional reform and the electoral reform. It's a two-track thing, but we seem to focus on little bit at a time. I believe that this thing about you are an American or Canadian or whatever citizen, you reside in that country. You are not entitled to vote in Dominica because you do not pay taxes in Dominica. You send a barrel home to your family. That's what you do. People are talking about Americans vote wherever they are. Wherever an American lives, unless they have renounced their citizenship, they pay taxes. That is why they have the thing to vote. Mm-hmm. And most of the people are soldiers who are overseas. And when you're overseas as a soldier, you live on American soil wherever you are. So this foolishness of people talking about virtual citizenship, that is nonsense. There's nothing like no virtual constituency. This is the foolishness that we allow. We discuss things that are irrelevant to the problem is we need electoral reform. If you cannot basically agree electoral reform, okay, and when I suggest constitutional reform, they say, no, well, it's a long process. If you cannot put some people together to put together a draft constitution, and by the way, I hear everybody keep talking about democracy. Dominica is not a democracy. It is a republic. And for those intellectuals on your panel, let them explain to Dominican the difference between a democracy and a republic. Dominica Constitution says that we are a republic.
The thing is, caller, I'm allowing you to make your points, but take into account, we have limited time, and we have people on the panel. We have those who are expecting a call. And we do not. One second, please. 1 second, please. And we do not want to divert, because once you open into another area, people will call, and then I cannot stop them. That's why we advised earlier on, when you call, let's try to keep on the topic that we're discussing and how we can organize ourselves going forward to ensure we give effect to what we want to achieve as far as these things are concerned. So I would just plead with you, if you can keep on the matters before us, so we can avoid diverting to bring other people making the point to support or agree with what you say and create a kind of a setback for what we want to do here tonight. Okay. So thank you very much.
Okay. But the issue here is the issue of constitutional reform was raised by Mr. Vital. It is necessary in the process of the electoral reform.
What he said, there are some things he didn't mention.
That will require electoral reform.
Can you please listen to what I'm saying? He did not say we need constitutional reform. He said certain things that we were recommending require constitutional change. So therefore you have to amend the constitution or get it in sync with the constitution. But there are simple things we can do without doing that. That's what he mentioned. But the question of debating constitutional reform can just take us into the whole night and derail what we're trying to do.
Granted. However,
yes,
in the constitutional reform issue, I have said before, Kerrit will not give us electoral reform. We have to take it. The problem with us is we talk, but we are hesitant to even use the word take it. He is not going to give it. As you can see, because he'll go to the parliament with his majority and he will ram it through. And there is absolutely nothing you can do after. The other thing with us is a lot of us talk, and a lot of these people who talk so much, there are matters that people can take separately, individually. You don't have to wait on the opposition or anything. You can go to the court with a mandamus brief on any of these issues. We can stop these issues, but we don't.
Yes.
In the past, I suggested that we should stop these things before the election. Don't wait after the election because they go to court with judicial review and strike out.
Yes.
And
okay,
we are allowed to take those states.
Okay.
Good night, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Yes, I don't want to cut out any caller, but I just would like if we could just stay on the issue that is before us. Otherwise, we find ourselves every program diverting and diverting. Okay. So Kent, you are done in your presentation, right? You had finished?
Yes, I was. Yes.
Yes, you have finished it, yeah. Yes, you were saying
yeah, well, from where Kent left off, we just to reiterate, based on his immediate recommendation with regards to campaign finance, we have identified that as a significant omission. And we really want the public, and to ask the public, do Dominicans believe an electoral legislation should go to Parliament without addressing the problem of campaign financing, which will allow the Labour Party, which already has its incumbency advantage, to continue to bring in chartered planes of voters and high-priced international artists without accounting on the source of funds? Because that is what we're really talking about in relation to the campaign finance. Is, we need legislation so that there can be regulations as regards to financing. Who finances, what extent of financing, where financing, sources of financing, and so forth. We need to have some kind of robust oversight, and that has to be presented in campaign finance reform. And there are a lot of things that happen in our election process. The issue of chartered planes, buying candidates to contest elections, the high price of engaging international artists, expensive memorabilia, blocking opposition from hiring buses, and song systems and musical bands by paying people in advance so that the opposition don't get access to such services and so forth, and the paying of voters. All these are some of the adverse impacts of the lack of campaign finance reform. And if we have to continue to have elections from time to time without having control or oversight with regards to some of these situations, we're going to be in a big mess with our elections. So yes, we say campaign finance reform, and some of you might think, well, it's a big word in there, but it actually boils down to some of the day-to-day things that happen during the election process.
Let me take this call. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Bosso.
Yes, good evening to you.
And good evening to the rest of the people in the studio.
Yes.
Bosso, I do not believe in this virtual constituency setup. I believe that we're trying, as though we offering too many concessions and all the rest. Constitution.
No. It's a matter. What was said there? Listen carefully. It says it's a matter we can explore in the future. It's not a matter that we have done for discussion. It's not included in our recommendations. It's matters as you go along. You can explore and have discussion on, and agree and disagree. But tonight is not basically that what we are focusing on.
Yeah, but I'll be very short. But I believe that the Constitution is very clear. You either live here or you don't live here. And if you live outside of Dominica, well, vote wherever you live. Vote where you live. You don't pay taxes here, you should not be voting here. Simple matter, case closed. That's all I'll say for tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Corbett, for calling.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just shouting out Mr. Corbett.
Yes,
But
yes.
I think I made my points clear on the area of campaign finance. We have a lot of anomalies emanating from the process of lack of oversight and regulation regards to campaign finance, and that has to be an integral part of the electoral reform process.
Yes.
Dominican, we need our electoral reform. Tell him, but call the cabinet. Our money can just go to waste like that. Dominicans spend their money. You should perform your duty. How long before we get our reform? We have some election in the interest of one man. But like Egypt, the people needs freedom.
The views expressed during this program are not necessarily those of Wise Q95 FM Radio. Wise Q95 FM Radio has not been able to independently verify the factual correctness or the allegations and statements made during the course of this program and cannot vouch for their accuracy. Therefore, Wise Q95 FM Radio will not accept any responsibility or liability for the statements or allegations made.
Yes, let's take this call. Hello, good evening.
Hello, yeah. Also, I go.
I'm good, I'm good.
Okay, Rastaman in the house, technical Rastaman.
Yes, go right ahead. We haven't got much time.
For the hospital,
yes.
Good for the big up to you, sir. I just like the vibes, you know what I mean? It's something good and natural. This is the skin, it's vital or whatever. But yeah, that's now, my brothers. I've been listening to the speech of the Prime Minister, and I trying to understand. Do you understand? Because I can't understand. What is electoral reform? That's what I want to know. I want to know what is electoral reform. And the Prime Minister has been pushing it in our face and in our mouth, talking about electoral reform. Electoral reform, that means he's going to reform whatever that on the people is. And that's exactly what the Prime Minister is. The Prime Minister is telling you what he is going to do. But I don't think we understand, and some of us really understand what he's saying. So as his birthday now, they say today is the Prime Minister's birthday. So I want to tell him happy birthday. But within your little drink you take, whether it's water or whatever, Mr. Scary, I want to call on you tonight again. That reform thing there is you reforming what you want. That is what you're saying. But it's not so, Mr. Scary. Turn it the other way and put whatever that is right in paper and come on the radio station and have a little meet with the people for the dividing session we have in about that electoral reform. Because Mr. Scary,
Yes.
I am telling you again, this is Kabwe man. Mr. Scary, all what is going on, you are totally making me afraid, you know.
Yeah.
You are frightening me, but you are not putting the fear into me, but you are frightening me. And Mr. Scary, when I say you are frightening me, the same way you have your little tricks of doing what you're doing, Mr. Scary, please do not lie no fire in the country because that's problem. Just give the people what they want and what they need. And just let everything go square and fair. And Mr.
Yes.
Skerrit, why you eating, Mr. Skerrit, and you fighting? You're not feeling what is happening. There is
Thank
give
you.
him a little secret.
Thank you so much, caller. Caller, thank you so much.
Ça, c'est bon là. Le ou fait après ça. Parce que Dombe qui tourné, you know.
Thank you so much,
I
caller.
have to go, you know, because you know what happening? Mr. Skerrit is making me lose my speech because I am afraid now for what is going to happen. Bosso and the panel.
Yeah, thanks.
It won't be easy.
Thanks a
You
lot.
can talk from today to tomorrow to tonight. Mr. Skerrit is already on his mission.
Thank you so much, caller.
Dominicans to wake up. Mr.
Yes, I was trying to get a caller to, because the time is against us there. It's just 9 minutes before 10, and we have to end at 10 o'clock. So
You might want to go back to Mr. Charles.
yes, I just want to say that the caller asked in terms of reform, what is electoral reform? Electoral reform is you have in law that guide the electoral process, and you want to ensure that the laws are adequately suitable to have a free, transparent, and fair election where the loopholes are not exploited by the incumbent. The incumbent today is the Labour Party. It might be tomorrow the UWP or the Freedom Party or anybody else later on. So it's not a law for just a party, it's a law for the state. And therefore, everybody who have an interest in wanting to represent their constituency, their people, and work in the governance of the country can feel free to do so. So I thank the caller for his points and his question, of course.
I would also.
1 second, Mr. Coffey. Yes,
Yeah.
what you saying?
Yeah, well, I would also add to that to satisfy the caller that as countries go from year to year, you have to bring your standards up to international best standards.
Best practice, yes.
To international best practice.
Mhm.
Yes, we have had our laws existing and we have had elections over time, but there are situations that arise that give rise to having to make changes so as to be relevant and so forth. So
Yes.
so that is another reason why reform is necessary.
Yes, well, of course, all of these things, we heard the recommendations on the areas in which the government has ignored and has captured the reform process as a partisan issue. It's not a partisan issue, it's not a partisan matter, it is a constitutional country matter, and therefore we saw the Prime Minister has declared war on the Electoral Commission. And the Electoral Commission is like the referee in the situation. Mr. Charles, I think that the people of Dominica have to be involved to ensure that the right reform goes to Parliament. So at the end of the day, it benefits the entire country. And election after election, we have the good laws that will guide the process of our elections. Before you come in, I see a call coming in. Let me see, take this call to see. Hello, good evening.
Yes, but so it's me again. But so we have been having election in that same way for years since I grew up as a child. And we have had no problem with fair election. But it's these people, this gang of thieves that came and find loophole to steal election. That is what causing the problem. All know.
Yes.
Maybe we should have been continuing with our same election process and not fighting for those things there. Although there are things that needed to be changed. But they were the one who dig until they find a way to thief the election. So we have that bat on our hand today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good point.
Mr. Charles, go right ahead, Mr. Charles.
Yeah, good night once again. As the last caller was saying, I'm stating that we are allowing them. But not we are allowing them. We are part of the process. We are the at the electoral office. We are the polling stations. we're in the head office, is we allow ourselves to be bought, belittled, and our pride, we don't really have trustworthy people no more, because one of the days, as we were using the old process, the voting process, everybody have was trustworthy. Right now, you can trust nobody to go and say, okay, when is the next general election? We have no idea. So we need to put a fixed date. Gone are the days when you will say, okay, 5 people on the list, nobody's gonna duplicate no voting, but everybody playing politics, trying to win, and everybody who have money, everybody kind of being selfish and have a lot of greed. So the whole campaign refinancing is playing a big part. So we need to change our mindset. Our mindset, I think we are lost. Is all of us. This is not just labor, right? It's just not workers, right? It's not opposition. I think we have lost our way, because this country is a godly country. I think we lost our way. And we are focused, as they say, on a lot of things, and we think it's not scary. He can never be scary that making himself win. It's us that voting for him. It's the people and them that doing whatever they have to do to make sure he's staying there. Maybe just for the financial power. I don't know. But we need to change our mindset, get back to the basic, get back to being trustworthy, get back to simple things. We just have this thing like it's a money thing and a greed, selfishness. According to the call, somebody call us, we just talking. And we have our hand to put the X to change things, and we're not using our hand, and we're saying, okay, and like we forgetting, like a fall brain, like we are fall, like we forgetting, oh, this happened. Okay, give me an next chance, give them an next chance. I don't know if we afraid change. I don't know why we afraid change. I don't know if people looking for friend. We don't come here for enemy, but we are looking for friend. We come here to safeguard our grandchildren, our children. Why are we free to change and do what we have to do? What is right? It's a simple thing to do what is right. It's simple. Not because you send money for my sister, you oversee. You send through the cash that give you the right to come down and come and vote. Vote for Trump. Vote for somebody in the UK. We can handle that down here. Just be trustworthy. Let us handle our thing. You can send the barrel. I'm your brother, your sister, send it for your auntie. That's not a problem. But our mindset, we have this thing, and we're always looking for what it have for you, what it have for them. Everybody looking for a financial escape or a financial power, which are already instilled in the people's mind that it have a money somewhere. So they'll support that and you'll get her money. But we need to change this. We need to change our mindset. It's not all about money. Change our mindset, or less our mindset to change. Any party that come in power or any party that have money go to buy people. It's going to come down to our mindset. We have to stand for something else, we're going to fall for something. We have to change our thinking and get back to being the independent and the strong mind and strong willed person that we were once were in Dominica, an independent state. That's
Yeah.
it for tonight.
Okay, then thanks. Let us again. I mentioned in the beginning that we have a lot of work to do, and this month we are dedicating this month to the ultimate battle for true electoral reform, meaning that we want what is right to go in there, which will be beneficial to everybody, the party in power and the rest of the parties in the country generally. And we ask you, because we said we will be doing meetings, engagement in the various constituencies, we'll be on the ground, we'll be doing a mass rally in Roseau towards the end of June. We'll give you more information on that as to the location, but get yourself ready. And we have asked you locally and overseas to assist us in raising the required resources to be able to effect those activities. For example, you would need to pay buses to take people into the activities. You need to also to pay for PA system for setting up of the mass rallies and things like that. So we need your assistance. So we ask you to donate. We said you can call and make contribution. We also will give you the Linkcliff accounts where you can go in there and you can contribute. Those of you versus you have done it before and would appreciate you do it again to assist the process, because we have quite a lot of work to do to effect the electoral reform that we want to see go into Parliament. And it's www.nidclf.org. So it's www.niclef.org. So it's www.nidclf.org. So go there and you can make a contribution. And we always thank you for your support in the past, and we look forward to your support now and going forward. Of course, I mentioned Mr. Coffey mentioned the question of the engagement on the ground. We mentioned the mass rally coming up towards the end of June, and the whole idea is to educate and sensitize people on the issue of reform, that we can pay attention to what is happening as far as electoral reform is concerned. We encourage people to themselves read the legislation, and what you need clarification on, then you can feel free to call one of us to assist you there. And we look forward to you coming out and support at the town hall meetings that we'll be having, and the mass rally in particular that we'll have towards the end of June. And take into account that the Prime Minister did mention that he wants this to go to Parliament in June, and the idea he gave is that before the budget, the 2024-2025 national estimate, but you don't need to have the law passed before the budget, because you can always do a supplementary estimate to provide for the new reform that you want to put. So it's a very poor excuse, and I think the Prime Minister's Prime Minister should stop doing that. It's a very poor excuse to give people the impression that it's a burning issue because you need to go to Parliament to cater for it and so forth. It doesn't work that way. The Commission has to give you the required amount, and you could legislate it into law, either through the budget if you have time, but we should not rush this thing without people's opportunity to discuss it. And of course, if it doesn't reach that point, you can always do a supplementary estimate. I think the Prime Minister talked about the question of discussion, dialogue is over. It may be over for him, but I think he's given us a new law. And he made the point earlier on that we paid, and I think Charles also made the point, that we paid Sir Dennis Byron over $600,000 to do this work. People were engaged with him to do the drafting of the legislation. It was sent to us, and all this work was thrown aside. So it's like a betrayal to Sir Dennis Byron, and it is if you like, robbing the treasury, robbing the taxpayers $600,000 that can go into medication at the hospital or on other places of comfort to the country that was given, and the work that was done was just thrown aside. Okay? So the Prime Minister must not give the impression that he so much in a haste to go to Parliament, because what he has given us is a new law, and therefore people need time to study the law. The Electoral Commission, as the referee in the matter, we respect them, recognize their work, their value, and what they do, and can make the point that we'll ask for the extension of the commission, and Mr. Sir Dennis Byron made the same recommendation in his report, and the draft legislation, he also provided that, so that you could take away the political, if you like, machination of members of the commission. Because the commission before did their work professionally, even if they were appointed on the recommendation of their party, the Prime Minister, or the leader of the opposition. They did their work. Now what we have seen is persons who are in the commission, who have their own personal interests, and they sit there now, and they allow that to influence their decision on the commission. So you want persons who do not have that political baggage to carry to be in the commission to assist for fairness and so forth. And the Prime Minister further aside and so on. So the commission need now to engage with the stakeholders to ensure that the right thing is done and we get the kind of reform that reflect this kind of spirit of free and fair election that all the other countries have put reform in place to ensure that they have the kind of election that the country can move forward. Because what you want at the end of the day is for the winners and the losers to still continue to work together. The losers can call the winners and say congratulations and pledge to work with them for the good of the country. Not this kind of political war that we see going on all the time in our country. And in terms of our closing, because we have already passed our time there.
Might want Vita.
Let's ask Mr. Charles to do his closing. No, Charles, his closing. Mr. Charles?
Good night.
Yes.
Good night to the all the viewers tuning in and to the panel we are there tonight. We will have to continue the fight. It's fighting not a physical fight. It's a fight to be on the ground to support and get the reform that we need to go to Parliament. And we also need to be mindful and educate ourselves about this reform fully and get this thing going, because this is communal annoyance right now. We need to get this thing off the ground and put this on the side and move the country forward. So that's it for the night.
Thank you so much, Mr. Charles. We appreciate you very much and your contribution this evening on this program. Mr. Vital, Ken Vital.
Yes, thanks, boss. So, many callers tonight clearly said we have spoken a lot. Now it's time for action. But what is for sure is that we in the ERC at least, and not just the ERC, but everybody else, the political parties, CCM, we have done every reasonable thing. We have done everything that's right to bring reason, to get the government to listen to reason, to get the government to do the right thing. We have done everything we could, and they were admonished as well by the observers. So we have gotten to a point where nobody can say we missed anything in terms of explaining, in terms of talking, in terms of pleading. We have done everything, and we have gotten to a point where it seems as if this government will not freely, willingly give electoral reform. Therefore, the people, and the lady earlier raised the issue of republic versus democracy, but we'll deal with that another time. But the people have to protect certain rights. Otherwise, we become slaves. Otherwise, we become a dictatorship. Otherwise, we live in a country that is not a true country where poverty will increase. We have to decide this is the last straw. We have done everything reasonable. Now it's time for us to think, how do we get our country back to a place of sanity? And the people are beginning to say, clearly, we have spoken enough. Enough said.
Thank you so much, Ken Vital. And of course, Dominicans recognize our effort, and you put it correctly. Mr. Coffey?
Yes, well, in my closing remarks, I first of all want to remind Dominican citizens that we have to say no to scary legislation. The electoral reform legislation is not scary legislation. It's the people's legislation. And therefore, the people must put themselves in the forefront in terms of required action that might be necessary to ensure that we get the people's legislation. I also, in closing, want to echo the point made by Boston a while ago as regards to the Electoral Commission. We do not believe that Mr. Skerrit has the authority to dictate to the Electoral Commission a deadline in terms of their review of the legislation. That should entirely be left to the confines of the Electoral Commission itself as to giving them adequate time to review and to propose what they believe is in the interest of Dominican citizens. And Mr. Skerrit, in his pronouncement, suggesting that he is not prepared or to continue to seek consultation, we're saying that that is a process that the Electoral Commission needs to bring on board as part of its activity and to consult the public before any approval of the Skerrit legislation. And let me say in closing, one of the critical things that we would like constituents and citizens to begin to do, in addition to other calls for action, is that we believe that constituents must begin to call on their parliamentarians, pressure their parliamentarians, all the labor parliamentarians, pressure them to ensure that the Skerrit legislation does not go before Parliament without the input of the people in terms of the achievement of good and comprehensive reform for Dominica. So this is where I rest for tonight. I thank my fellow panelists, Mr. Charles, Mr. Vital, Mr. Boston on the console. Thanks for having me as part of the panel tonight. Thank you, listeners and viewers.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Coffey. And just to add to what you said, I just want to appeal to our religious community, our brothers and sisters, our pastors and priests in the religious community, to pray for Dominica and to advise the Prime Minister to let common sense prevail and let's do the right thing. And you appeal to constituents to speak to their members of parliament, call them, to ask them to discuss with you the legislation that is put before us as a country, as a nation, and to ensure that your parliament does the right thing. It's not a matter of going to parliament and say the ayes have it. It's go to parliament and do the right thing so that our election laws can be proper and it can be in sync with international best practice, also in sync with what is happening in the region, because our brothers and sisters in the rest of the region have done reform. Remember time in Jamaica, there was serious issues in Jamaica. The two political parties there, the Labour Party there and the National Party there, the PNP, People's National Party, they were at odds. And when they fix up their reform, they still have their political, battle going on. Yes, that will exist because you want to promote yourself, promote your programs and your activities, and win the hearts of voters, and to get elected to parliament, to be in government, and to serve. That will be there, no matter what. But the situation that we used to have before there have changed. And therefore, it's the same thing we are saying, let's do in Dominica, so we don't find ourselves in a situation where we're always in a fight, in a quarrel, and so on, and dissatisfaction, and have to take matters to court and all of that. We want to eradicate that and to have free and fair and transparent election in the Commonwealth of Dominica. And this is what we're asking, it's what we're appealing for. So again, I just want to say to you out there, we need your support, your financial support. We need your hands involved, your boots on the ground, so that we can ensure that the matters that is going before Parliament can be fixed up. Always saying to the Prime Minister, to the Attorney General, and to the government, let us fix the legislation to reflect not what the Prime Minister wants personally in his politics, but what the country should have for the good of the politics of everybody and for that of the children of the country and its people, because elections have consequences. So again, we want to thank you for listening, and those of you who call, we want to thank you for your calls and your contribution. And again, you can go to the Nickliff account, website, and you can make a donation there to assist us in that effort. And those of you locally, will give you some other time an account where you can be able to make contribution to the efforts that we are undertaking. So we again thank you, and I want to apologize for Dr. Fontaine. He was on the ground in La Plaine, and then he had a meeting in Grand Fond, and I suspect he got caught there because, in those meetings and the internet sometimes can give you difficulties in your phone wherever you're at. So we want to apologize for him, but he did say he would try his best to call in on the program. But he was engaged in some, what you call, constituency meet or constituency tour today. And he was out, and he's out from morning. So again, thank you so much, listeners. We appreciate you. We want to thank the management and staff of the big station, Q95 FM Radio. That's where you can listen for information, for education, and for entertainment. And keep on doing that. And of course, we thank you for keeping democracy and alive and ensuring that there is a medium to express these views. These are good views in the interest of Dominica and Dominicans. Some may see it otherwise, but at the end of the day, you'll come to realize it is for all of us that we're doing this work. And we want to especially thank Mr. Gregoire, Sheridan Gregoire, and to wish him and his family all the best. So again, thank you. God bless. Have a good night rest. And we'll see you some other time. We're going to be back here next week, Saturday, God's willing. So the month of June is declared as the month for ultimate battle for true electoral reform in the Commonwealth of Dominica, our beloved nation. So again, thank you and good night.
Greetings, Mr. Abdullah. Salam alaikum. I'm singing to make you aware. Things are bad. Dominican, we need our electoral reform. Tell him, but call the cabinet. Money can just go to waste like that. Dominicans spend their money. You should perform your duty before we get our reform. We have some election in the interest of one man, but like Egypt, the people is freedom. If you cannot deliver, then give us back our dollars. Stay in your lane. We know you know our country loves to spend the money, sir. Stay in your lane. The people frustrated and tired. Dominicans have taken all they can take. Give us reform before the fall house break. People know of full was brigade. May 29 and blood that was shed. So if you don't deliver for what he paid, Guy pool process. What? Now, Dominican, Dominicans, we need to fight for what we believe. Enough talking, time for action. We need reform, we need a protest man. The people pressurizing, they're ready for action. How long before we get our reform? If we vote without voters ID, we could vote for a death penalty.